Hello, delegates and advisors, and welcome to a delegate training on how to model UN. Let's go ahead and get started. A quick disclaimer, at Yale Model United Nations, we use UNA USA parliamentary procedure. There are a lot of other types of parliamentary procedures that you'll find out there that other conferences may use. However, at all Yale Model United Nations conferences, we will use UNA USA. All right, quick introduction. It's super nice to meet you. My name is Jack Ludwig. I am the Director General of Committees for this iteration of YMUN. If you have any questions about any of the committees, about any parliamentary procedure, anything we cover in this presentation, please feel free to shoot an email my way. My email is right there, dg.committees@ymun.org. All right, let's get started. So in opening committee, the first thing that'll happen is attendance, both so we know who's here, but also so that you're able to get on the platform and speak. You'll do a roll call vote, and you can either be present or present in voting. The difference between present and present in voting really only comes into play during voting procedures. If you are present, that means you oh, sorry, there was someone walking into the room. If you are present, what that means is that you do not have to vote on voting procedures and you can choose to abstain. If you are present in voting, you cannot abstain. You have to vote yes or no on working papers and resolutions. Or I'm sorry, not on working papers, on draft resolutions. Um, all delegates must vote on things like moderated, unmoderated caucuses, and things that move the committee along. Next, and this is the big one that will take place during the entire committee, is the chair will ask, are there any points or motions on the floor? This is how you open debate because there has to be a motion to open debate, which is just a formality. But this will also happen all throughout the conference to help move the committee along. And then you'll set the agenda. Most of you guys have two topics in your topic guides, and setting the agenda at the beginning helps to select which topic will go first. Usually, this will only take about 5 to 10 minutes, either with a quick usage of the speakers list or with a true for and two against. But it's important to know, this is an opportunity for you to say, well, we really need to talk about this topic before we can dive into this one, or this topic is more pressing than the other one. Hopefully, this should not take too long, so you can get to debating the actual topic. All right, and then the first big thing that you can really do to help put yourself out there is to get on the speakers list. After the agenda is set, the speakers list will open, and that is just a list of speakers who would like to speak whenever we fall back to the speakers list. So if there are no points or motions on the floor, you will go back to the speakers list and go from there. And then at the beginning of committee session one, or at the beginning of the next topic, usually around committee session 4 or 5, you'll also reuse the speakers list to have people give their opening speeches on topics. Just a quick reminder, opening speeches are the only speeches that are allowed to be pre-written. So you are allowed to come up with a, quick 30-second, 45-second to 1 minute long speech that addresses your position, how you feel, what you would like to do, who you'd like to work with, a history of that topic in your, what if it's a GA, ECOSOCs, or RBs in that country. If you are playing a character or a role, you can describe yourself. Those are allowed to be pre-written outside of committees, and those are the only thing that are allowed to be pre-written. Everything else has to be written in the committee. But making sure that you're on the speakers list is a really great opportunity to give a first impression and to put your name and yourself and your ideas out to the rest of the committee. All right, quick rundown of a couple things that will happen in committee. Round robins, these will really only occur in crisis and specialized committee. It is an opportunity where each delegate, either going in alphabetical order or just around the room in, like, if you're sitting in a circle, usually it'll be about 30 seconds to a minute for everybody to speak on one topic. You are allowed to pass. However, as the DG of committees, I highly recommend you don't pass. Even if you say something brief, everything that you say does help get your name and yourself out there to the rest of the committee and can really lead to great collaboration and a great work directive. Next thing, note passing. Unless you've already been told by your advisor that your committee will not have note passing, every other committee will be a note passing committee. So you are allowed to use a sticky note or a small piece of paper to write notes during moderated caucuses. It's ways that you can privately communicate to form a block or communicate with delegates in your block when you're not allowed to openly talk. I would start doing this early. Try to do it during like the first moderated caucuses during the speakers list to try to be like, hey, even maybe you didn't even get the opportunity to speak, but you wrote notes to people around the room and said, hey, I'd love to work with you. And you're able to get all those people together to start working on a working paper or start brainstorming ideas. It's a really great way for you to get your name out while you're not able to speak. And then the next two things, which we'll go into a little bit more detail about, are moderated and unmoderated caucuses. Moderated caucuses is the formalized debate where you'll stand up, give a quick speech, and then sit back down. Unmoderated caucuses are informal debate, so you'll go around the room, talk with people, and this is where the working paper and draft resolutions writing will be done. All right, moderated caucuses. What are they? They are structured debate with a list and a limited time to speak. Who is speaking? The chairs will select speakers from around the room, and they will go one at a time. How do you motion for a moderated caucus? So, motioning, you will raise your placard, the chair will call on you, and you will say, motion for a total duration, and then an individual speaker's time, moderated caucus on the topic of blank. All moderated caucuses have a topic. Let's say you are in the Pacific Island Forum, maybe a topic might be rising oceans. But all moderated caucuses will have a topic. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the total duration and speaker's time here. So these are some examples. Motion for a 5:30, 6:45. A lot of times you'll hear a 10:1, a 9:45. The way that that's structured is the first number is the total speaker's time. So for this one, it's a 5 minute. For that, the next one, it's a 6 minute. If it's a 10:1, that's a 10 minute total speaker's time. The second number is the individual speaker's time. So if it's a 10:1, then each speaker has 1 minute and there will be 10 speakers total. An important note when you're making these motions, because the chairs will do the math on it, you have to make sure that the first number, the total time, can be divisible by the second number. So for example, 45 seconds is usually a weird one. As long as you're going in sequential numbers of three, so 3, 6, 9, 12, it will be divisible. A 1 minute 1 minute individual speaker's time is easy. That just goes into whole number times. And then 30 seconds is the same thing. This really is only a problem for 45 seconds. We're also going to try to limit the amount of times you do speaker times over 1 minute. Usually it's not very recommended to do speaker times of 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, just because nobody is really able to get a good point across in that time, and you will never use that full amount of time. So we really recommend doing something in between, total time, maybe 5 minutes to 15 minutes, and then individual speakers time from 30 seconds to a minute. But obviously, depending on the committee, there may be some things that happen that lead to that being different. All right, unmoderated caucuses. This is that informal, unstructured debate without individual speakers' times. You really just get to stand up and walk around and talk to the other delegates in your committee. Speaking, you just do it. If you got a note during debate, go find that person. If you sent a note during debate, go find that person. Talk and mingle. It's like a mixer, a party. It's a lot of fun. This is really where you get to stand out, not just as a speaker or well-versed, but you really get to show your collaboration, your writing skills. So maybe if you aren't the best speaker or your speech is a little iffy, this is really where you get to shine. And then for motioning, super simple. You'll raise your placard, say motion for a minute unmod. So if you want a 10-minute unmod, motion for a 10-minute unmod. If you want a 30-minute unmod, motion for a 30-minute unmod. These ones are very simple. And now how to succeed at an unmod? First, motion for it correctly. Motion for a 10-minute unmoderated caucus. Again, unmods do not have topics because you can really talk about whatever you would like. So make sure if you're motioning for it, you know how to motion for it. Be realistic when you're motioning. Chairs are not going to accept an unmod that is crazy long, or if it's way too early in committee. For example, you probably won't get to an unmod in the first committee session because chairs and other delegates want to hear your opening speeches and how you talk and are able to do that formalized debate. So my recommendation is not to motion for an unmod in the first committee session unless you really have covered everything, or you're a smaller committee like a crisis or specialized where everybody was able to speak and you heard from everybody, then it's appropriate. But in GAs and ECOSOCs, you probably won't get to an unmod in the first committee session. Also, don't motion for a hour-long unmod. A chair is not going to allow that. They're going to rule that dilatory. Blocks. On mods is really the time where you get to form blocks. Blocks are the people that you want to work with. Usually they're people that have very similar policy or foreign policy or environmental policy, depending on what committee that you're in. So begin to form blocks during unmoderated caucuses, and that's how you're able to start writing and getting on a working paper and making it to a draft resolution and being able to get your paper passed, which is really what we want. And then also respect. At the end of the day, chairs are looking for respectful, collaborative delegates. If you have opinions and you voice them, awesome, but make sure that you're being kind, considerate during all of these unmoderated caucuses and not being overpowering and demanding and mean to other people in your committee. If it gets serious enough that your behavior or your tone must be dealt with, then we will have to talk to members of senior sec and potentially get you removed from that committee. We don't want that to happen. I don't foresee that happening, but just make sure you're being respectful and kind. That will very well go into awards. And that also shows your collaboration skills, which at the end of the day, that's what all the delegates want to see, is how you're able to collaborate and work with them. All right, quick thing on points. There are a couple of points that you'll be able to use. A point of order, which is used to correct procedural error if you think the chair has made a problem. Let's say that they were using YMUN command, which is what we use to display what's going on in committee, and you motion for a unmoderated caucus and they accidentally put in a moderated caucus. That's a time where you would say, point of order, I think you put the motion in wrong. Point of inquiry is for you to ask any question that has to do with parliamentary procedure. Let's say you're a new delegate and you don't really know, let's say you don't know what a moderated caucus is. You can raise your placard and say, point of inquiry, I'm not exactly sure what a moderated caucus is. And that's when the chair will be able to briefly explain that to you. And then the last thing is a point of personal privilege. This is something that is not really related to the proceedings of committee and just something that you need. Let's say it's you need to be excused from the room, you need bathroom water. That's when raise the placard, point of personal privilege, I need to run to the bathroom. Or to correct some personal issues, maybe the room's too cold or you're in the back and you're struggling to hear somebody. That's when you can say, point of personal privilege, can the delegates please speak up? I can't hear them. But those are the main points that you will use. Oh, here's an example. A point of order, the delegate motion for a 645, not a 7-1. So that's a perfect example of, oh, the chair made a slight problem. Let's make sure it gets corrected. Point of inquiry, when would the chairs like draft resolutions to be sent in? Or to what email should we send them in? Those are some great points of inquiry. And then personal privilege. Can I use the bathroom? All right, writing resolutions. This applies to non-crisis and specialized committees. Those will be directives. I highly recommend that if you are still unsure about how to write directives for crisis and specialized, that you attend the specialized and crisis trainings that will take place between 5 and 6 p.m. on Thursday, January 15th, on the first day before the opening ceremony. Let's get into resolutions writing. So this is what a resolution, not a revolution, will be comprised of. A title or heading. Usually my recommendation is make these catchy, make these fun. The more exciting and engaging that your title is, the more that people will talk about your working paper or draft resolution. And then there will be sponsors and signatories. Sponsors are the people that wrote it. Signatories does not mean you want it to be passed or that you are the biggest fan of it. It just means you want to see it debated. That's a common mistake that happens in a lot of committees. And then the bulk of the resolutions are preambulatory clauses and operative clauses. Preambulatory clauses state the issues that the resolution is going to be resolving. And then operative clauses are the detailed plan of what will happen to resolve those issues. So let's take a look at some preambulatory clause examples. So again, they set up context for the reasons for the resolution. In preambulatory clauses, you'll always use a word at the beginning, such as noting or aware or recognizing, and those will be italicized. So, for example, noting that the United States combat troops are set to withdraw from Afghanistan by the end of 2014. This is taken from a resolution that was done years ago. So it's not accurate or updated to today. Aware that according to UNAMA, over 15,000 Afghan civilians were killed between 2006 and 2012, though thousands more died from related problems such as starvation, disease, and poverty. And then last one, recognizing. So you get it's stating the problems and the reasons for why this resolution is being written. Usually, you will have the same number of preambulatory clauses as you do major operative clauses. So if you have like five big sections that you're addressing with your operative clauses, you should have five preambulatory clauses that are related to those operative clauses. And then operative clauses. These call for specific actions to be taken. The first word is underlined and they're numbered one, two, three, four, five, however many you have. Let's show an example real quick. Recommends that member states increase support for relevant aid organizations operating in and around Afghanistan, particularly for campaigns working on projects such as but not limited to, and then it keeps going. This is where you get really specific with the solutions to the topic guides. You'll always start it with an action word, so recommends, strongly encourages. I know we have a list on our website of all the different words that can start preambulatory and operative clauses. I highly recommend you either print that out as a part of your research or you give that a good look over before going into committee. And yeah, so this talks about increasing aid, and then as you get further into that operative clause, the first bullet, the one is really like, hey, this is what we're going to be talking about inside this operative clause, and then you get more and more specific as that operative clause continues. So this is a example of like a very, very small one. I would recommend fleshing this out a lot more and talking about specific things that you would do to increase relevant aid. All right, quick distinction on signing. Again, I think I talked about this earlier, but sponsors are people that have substantially contributed and written on the paper, whether with their ideas or with genuine writing. Usually it is with writing. At the beginning of committee sessions, the chairs will set a minimum and maximum for sponsors and signatories. Usually it'll be somewhere between 4 and 10. If you're a larger committee like a GA or ECOSOC, it'll probably be closer to 10. If you're in a smaller committee like an RB, it might be closer to 4. And then signatories, there's going to be a minimum set, but there is no maximum. Everybody in committee can be a signatory because maybe everybody wants to see that resolution or working paper debated. And again, this is not someone who supports the paper. It is someone who just wants to see it debated. And then amendments. Amendments happen during the voting procedures for draft resolutions. So there are two types of amendments. There are friendly and unfriendly. When you go into amendment procedure, if you have an amendment you would like to see added, some chairs will do this differently in the committee, but generally you'll raise your placards. You say, I motion to amend this thing. And if the sponsors of that draft resolution think that amendment is good and they like it, it will be friendly, meaning it'll just get immediately added to the draft resolution. If it is unfriendly, which means that you say, hey, I motion to change this, and the sponsors do not like that and they do not want to see that added, then it will go to a vote where a two-thirds majority of the committee will have to vote yes for that amendment to then be added. If it does not get the two-thirds majority, then the amendment will not be added and the draft resolution will look the exact same. And then all amendments must be added prior to final voting on the resolution. So there's no, yeah, the resolution passed. Oh, can we change this last one thing? No, that's not going to happen. Once the draft resolution is passed or not passed, it's final. All right, quick thing on tech policy. Technology is only allowed in GA, RB, and ECOSOC committees during unmods. Crisis and specialized, you will not have any technology in your committees. So again, there is no technology during moderated caucuses. There is no tech in most unmods will be writing sessions, so you will use it in most unmods. But if you have any questions about, hey, is this unmod? Can I use my technology? Ask your chairs and they'll be able to answer those questions for you. And then definitely no out of committee resolution writing. We will be very strict this year on if we catch you writing outside of committee on working papers or draft resolutions, that will be just grounds for disqualification from awards and potential removal from committee. And then one thing we ask, no phones, please. You guys are only here for 4 days out of the year, and there are 7 committee sessions. We really ask for you guys to be as engaged as possible because your chairs have been working really hard on their topic guides and prepping for this conference. We've been working very hard and prepping everything for you. You guys, I know, have been working super hard and writing your position papers and doing research. So we really ask that you are not on your phones. If you're ever confused about whether or not you can use technology during specific parts of the day, or you have a problem or concern that you think needs to be addressed, please go up to your chairs. They'll be able to help you out, and they'll get you in contact with the people who can answer questions if they cannot. But your chairs and vice chairs are your best friends. Please go up to them if you have any concerns about tech or anything else. All right, some quick speaking tips. The topic guide should not be your only source of information and is meant to be a starting point. This is really relevant for GAs, RBs, EcoSocs. If there is a specialized or crisis where there's really no information out there other than what's on the topic guide, maybe it's a futuristic committee that your chair has created. But for GAs, RBs, and EcoSocs, you really should be going out and looking for extra research. Maybe research things that your country has done. Maybe research more stuff about a specific issue. That is really going to help set you apart when it's time to propose solutions and ideas. Again, thoroughly research your country's stance and that of your allies, making sure you know what your position is and what you believe. That's kind of what you did through your position paper. But it also really pays off to do that to your allies as well. Know what they believe. Maybe know what your enemies believe. That knowing what other people around you believe in their positions can really help you when it comes time to forming blocks and speaking. Vary your tone during your speeches to keep everyone engaged. Nobody wants to hear a very monotone and boring and dull speech. Making sure you're using inflection and tone in your speeches keeps it interesting and keeps people engaged. Developing a niche and specific solution, clearly presenting it in your speeches and ensuring that it becomes part of a resolution. If you come in your opening speech and you say, "Hey, I want that, this is what I think, and this is the solution that I think is done," and that shows up in your resolution, or that's something that gets talked about and debated, that's a really good sign that not only are you an eloquent enough speaker that people listen to you, but also that your idea was very, very good and you clearly had done your research. So that's a really great way to show to your chairs that you mean business. Keep your placards raised. Be adding yourself to speakers lists, be motioning for things. The more that you are in committee, the more that your chairs and other delegates get familiarized with you, the better you're able to perform in unmoderated caucuses, and the better you'll perform at awards. Step outside of your comfort zone. We all make mistakes, and that is okay. It's only through those mistakes we learn and become the best versions of ourselves. The chairs know you guys are all high school students. We don't expect you to be diplomats and delegates to the extent that those at the UN in New York are. It is okay to make a mistake, or maybe you have an idea and you're really excited about it, and then as people are speaking, you realize maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe there are some holes or some flaws in that idea that I didn't anticipate. That is okay. We would rather hear you guys speaking, collaborating, and coming to those solutions together than everybody's a little bit afraid to share what they think or how they feel or solutions that they have because they're worried that maybe it's not going to be the best. So step outside of your comfort zone. Maybe you're not the greatest speaker, and maybe speaking for 1 minute at a time really scares you. I urge you to get out of your comfort zone and try your best to go up and speak on that topic for as long as you possibly can. This is a perfect learning opportunity. Take a deep breath. You've got this. If you need any help, reach out to your chairs and vice chairs. They're there to help you. Also, slowing down in your speech. A lot of times, sometimes when you get a little nervous and you walk up and you just speak super fast and nobody can hear what you're saying, and slow down. Take a deep breath. The slower that you speak, especially we have a lot of delegates who English might not be their first language, or maybe they're not used to hearing English on a daily basis. The slower that you speak and the more you articulate, the better that you will come across to your delegates, to your fellow delegates. And then most importantly, have fun. I am so excited for all of our committees. I think it'll be a wonderful experience. And the reason I think that is because, yes, all of this diplomacy and all these solutions are being around, but I really want you guys to have fun. In a crisis committee with all these updates and notes and specialized with updates in GA, RB, Eco Stocks, with you guys being able to meet each other and talk to each other and enjoy each other's company. Make friends here. That's an awesome opportunity for you to know people from around the world. So really come to this conference prepared, but also come prepared to have a lot of fun. Some quick reminders: don't use stereotypes, harassing or demeaning or hateful or discriminatory language. Being in character means advocating for your country's policies when appropriate, not engaging in stereotypes or hate speech. We shouldn't have this problem. You guys are all old enough to know what is and is not appropriate and what constitutes taking on a role in a position and being hateful and mean. If we have any problems with this, we'll deal with it. I don't foresee there being problems with this. You guys all know what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. And finally, YMUN is meant to be a place of learning and growth, and most importantly, fun. If at any point a delegate or yourself feels uncomfortable or feels as though their personal identity is attacked, please have them reach out to you or their advisor, whether you are a head delegate or you're helping run your committee, or you're just a delegate who is feeling attacked and has a problem. Please feel free to reach out. Let your advisor know, and then also come and let your chair know, and we can make sure that those issues are addressed. If you have any concerns during committee about anything that we've talked about, please feel free to go up to one of your chairs and we'll get those issues resolved. All right, and finally, we have some advice from some of our Munty kids. Munty is the competitive Model UN team at Yale, and we have some awesome chairs that are members of Munty who have some advice for you guys. Mara said, when in committee, be sure to have substance. Signal the cadence of the, I'm sorry, signal the content of your speech like relative importance by changing your cadence, tone, and volume to make your speeches more effective. If you see another power delegate, it would benefit you to form a block away from them with non-power delegates to try to stand out within that group. Don't be afraid of conflict if needed, but maintain diplomacy. Do this as a last resort. Don't willingly butt heads with other people or power delegates. Once in that block, stand out by moderating discussions and being a leader, not just the one asking permission to talk or just simply sitting there and writing resolutions. In crisis, take risks. You won't gavel by being conservative within your crisis notes or in your directives. And Micah, remember, Model UN is all about social relationships. Be aware of your social presence in the room at all times. Be personable, social, and dynamic. The way other delegations view you as is established from your first speech and during unmoderated caucuses. In opening speeches, be loud and emotional. Find a personal connection to the assigned topic and speak from the heart. In the first unmoderated caucus, be assertive and diplomatic. Try to speak first and guide the conversation by asking others, particularly quieter delegates, and to share their opinions. Time outside of committee is just as important as time inside the committee room. Get to know your block, make group chats, or go out for lunch. Remember, delegates are humans too, and if they like you, they'll listen to you. I 100% agree with that last point. Get to know your fellow delegates outside of committee. The one thing that I definitely do not recommend doing, though, is don't talk about committee inside of the committee room. Obviously do not pre-write. Do not be talking about things that happen inside of committee. Get to know them for the people that they are. The better relationship you have outside of Model UN with your delegates, the better that you'll work inside the committee room. So use that time of lunches and dinners to really get to know the people in your committee or get to know the people from your delegation or your school. This is a great social experience to really get to know more people. And I urge you to take advantage of it and not just focus on making sure that you are using all of the time to win. It really is a great and fun opportunity. All right, and that is all I have for you guys. Again, if you have any questions or concerns or comments, please feel free to email me at dg.committees@ymun.org. And I cannot wait to see all